All right, so the title of this panel, which is not Bring It All Home, but that's what we're gonna do. So it's really solutions to prepare and thrive in the school year ahead. As Carrie said, I am Beth Feely, really a local mom of 3 who saw some stuff in her school she didn't like and banded together with a few other parents, and we founded really what might have been one of the first parent groups in the nation, because this was in 2017. This was before COVID, when a lot of us learned what was happening. And so that group is Nurture Neighbors, and we still run locally. Our focus is our school district, and we try to raise awareness in the community of a lot of the issues, around race, gender, you name it, and really about transparency. I also co-host a podcast. I kind of stumbled into this as a result of my efforts, and it's on Ricochet Network. It's called Take Back Our Schools, unsurprisingly. So, all right, so today we have talked an awful lot about gender from various perspectives. We've talked about the medical, education, historical, legislative, business and entrepreneurial opportunities, which is awesome. So now we're going to spend some time on the legal. We've not talked a lot about that, and it really is one of the ways that we are going to get on the other side of this. So we have a fantastic panel to do that, and then we also will end up on the practical, because we want everyone to leave here knowing what they can do tomorrow or at 5 o'clock to really find your role in this fight. All right, so for the panel, I'm going to invite them to introduce themselves, and I'll start down at the end here with Alvin.
Hey everybody, what's up? My name is Alvin Lui, and I'm with Courage is a Habit. And some of you probably use our tools. If you don't, it's courageisahabit.org. And my organization creates tools and strategies for all of you and for legislators, because the indoctrination in schools is confusing on purpose. And so our job is to distill it down to really beautiful, easy to understand tools. But more importantly, we give you a call to action. Because a lot of times on our side, we create outrage, but there's no outlet. And when you create outrage without any outlet, it ends up creating hopelessness. And that's the last thing we want to do, because people are not hopeless. And so my organization tries to make sure that give you encouragement to stay on offense and give you the tools to do that. So happy to share, looking forward to sharing that with you guys today.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Vernadette Broyles, and I am the President and General Counsel of the Child and Parental Rights Campaign. We defend children's well-being and parental rights against the harms and the violations that are caused by transgender ideology. I say this more and more, literally everything is devolving to the courts. If you pass a good law, it doesn't matter. It'll get challenged in court. And so while every single battle is a critically important battle, right now the leading edge of this battle is in the court system. And so we litigate, we sue school districts for secretly transitioning children, at times even over their checks. And that's my star client right there. January Littlejohn was our very, very first case. But we also are protecting increasingly parents who are losing their children to Child Protective Services. We educate, we associate as well. And so we'll talk more about that later. I'm so grateful to be here.
Hi, my name is Erin Friday. I'm a California attorney. I am the co-lead of ROGD. This is a parent group of advocates, so we are the doers, like Alvin. And I also just joined the board of directors for GenSpec USA. And I'm a mother of a daughter who used to believe that she was a boy.
Hi, I'm Natalya Murakver, and I am the co-founder of Restore Childhood. We're based in New York City, but also national. And we came together during the COVID mandates when schools were closed and we were being called white supremacists and racists for wanting to reopen them. And later when 2-year-olds were masked in New York City, and we saw that we really couldn't trust the authorities with our children, so we had to do it ourselves. And our most recent work is a toolkit for parents to become aware and conversant in gender ideology in schools.
Great, thank you all again for being here. So let's start with the legal. We'll go Vernadette and Dan. Let's start with Vernadette. Can you bring us up to speed on where things are at and perhaps some of the notable cases that you're handling or have handled, remarkable aspects of it? And Beth, why don't we start there?
All right, we right now have 7 federal lawsuits in states around the country. We have 2 in Florida, and I won't tell you about every last one of them, but I will tell you about AB, whose parents showed up at school, where they were summoned to school, to see their daughter in the back of a police car being taken away. They learned for the first time that, actually they had learned that she had attempted suicide. And so she was, and this is literal, and she was being taken away to a mental health facility without their ability to be there or help her through that process. They learned for the first time that their daughter had been meeting secretly with the school counselor for months, every week, in order to affirm her gender identity. And they specifically conspired to not tell these Catholic parents because they knew, and they were Hispanic, by the way, because they knew they were Hispanic and they were Christian and they would not agree. We have that's the Perez case, and it's pending in the Middle District of Florida. Sage Blair. Sage was 12 years old. She had had a traumatic life, young life, and when she hit puberty, she was overwhelmed by her womanhood, began to trans-identify, was endorsed in this identity, began to be bullied horribly in the boys' bathroom where she was told she should use because now she's a boy. She was sexually assaulted there and threatened by the boys. So she runs away to protect her family. And when she runs away, she runs into the arms of a male predator who rapes her. She had never had a kiss, and traffics her to other men across state lines. I won't go through the long, horrific story. It was finally in Texas where we found her after being trafficked multiple times and caught up in the juvenile court system in Maryland. And she was finally returned to her parents, a deeply broken child. That case is now being appealed up to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. We have a case in California, but I'm going to pause there because not everything is negative. Our cases right now are incredibly hard fought. School districts have a gauntlet that parents have to run through in order to assert constitutional claims. They have many defenses, but it's a battle we have to fight. And so any one of our cases can set precedent for the country. And one case that has penetrated all of those barriers and is headed towards trial. And another case in which they want to settle. So I just got word of this. And I had this all up for you. All right. In a landmark decision that could upend California's controversial parental secrecy policies, a federal judge has just allowed a class action lawsuit to proceed, challenging the constitutionality of policies that keep parents in the dark about their children's struggle with gender dysphoria and gender confusion. The lawsuit, if successful, would render the recently signed AB 1955 that bans gender notification policies to parents. Well, it renders this irrelevant and could open the door for teachers and parents to sue school districts statewide, effectively dismantling the gender secrecy system imposed by the California Department of Education. This is out of California. Sorry. I want to very briefly talk about Child Protective Services. That's the other side of this. There's another leading edge of this going against traversing parental rights, and that is Child Protective Services being weaponized against parents who want to maintain biological reality. So we're making progress, real progress in the schools against secret transition. They're now trying a different avenue, and that's unleashing Child Protective Services. So we tried, to my knowledge, was the only law firm that tried successfully that defended parents in Arizona 2 years ago against CPS who took a child. Right. However, while she was in the state's custody, she became so radicalized that when we won the case and she had to be returned to her parents, she refused. She literally refused. She threatened to murder them and kill herself, and they took her right back into care. So we learn now, and some of the things we're going to talk about later, it's essential that we activate early in this case. And I'll stop with this. We have, right now, as we speak, we are fighting for a set of parents, immigrant parents in California. They're immigrants. they don't believe this ridiculous value system here in America. And so their 15-year-old daughter is in the state's custody. They've asked us to come on board. We are now literally preparing this case as we speak to be able to keep her out of the system so that what happened to this child in Arizona does not happen to her. And we would solicit your positive thoughts.
Thank you. Great news.
That's great news.
Breaking news. Alvin, so switching a little bit, kind of bridging from the legal to the practical. Legally in the state of Illinois, so parents of Illinois children wake up, your child can have 12 hours of social work unsupervised. You are not required to be informed with your child in school. And I know, Alvin, you've looked a lot at the school social worker world and kind of their role in pushing some of this. Not all of them do, but some. And so I was wondering if you could give us a brief kind of overview of that. And then we'll talk resources after. So if you want to touch on those a little bit, but we'll definitely give time for that.
Got it. Okay. So all K through 12 in all 50 states operate under the training and the ethics of the American School Counselor Association, or we call them ASCA. So I'll call them ASCA for today. And it doesn't matter what state you live in, if it's red or blue, because all the school counselors are trained to keep secrets from parents. Now, some counselors may not believe it, but they're still under the orders to do it. And so we've talked to counselors where they go, I don't do that. I don't believe that. So we go, great. So if a child comes to you in your school and she says, I think I'm a boy, what would you do? And they say, I can't do anything. Right. Because they're under that guise. So whether you live in a red or blue state, it doesn't matter what I'm about to say. So ASCA trains all their school counselors that they're a missionary to be able to save children from their abusive and unsafe parents. So most of this is really, most of the transgender cult operates on language contamination. I'm gonna give you a real easy way to explain this, okay? Language contamination is when they use your vocabulary but not your dictionary. So when they tell you, we're just teaching your children to be empathetic, most parents go, great, me too. What you don't understand is that they're teaching your children, especially girls, that when they turn 13, 14, 15, 16, and when a man walks into their bathroom or locker room, they have to be empathetic to him. They have to consider his human rights and his human dignity. So the transgender cult only works for the two powers that they have that works. And the school counselors are trained in this. The one is what I just said, language contamination. And the second is they weaponize your kindness. And they weaponize your empathy. Because they know that every parent, especially moms, you have this protective nature. You want all children to feel welcome. And they know that. So between language contamination and weaponizing your kindness, that's how they get to your kids and you nod along because you don't know you're going along with it. So one of the things that we train parents is that it's so important, number one, to reject inclusive language. Never use the transgender cult language. Never use their language, because the moment you use their language, you now transported yourself into their world. You can't win in their world. You have to stay grounded in reality. More importantly, your children need to hear you not use inclusive language. Okay? Now, I'm going to say this one thing that helps with the school counselors. The school counselors are all about redefining words. And the two words that they redefine is safety and abuse. If you redefine words, you don't actually have to change the laws because you'll piggyback on that. So what they do is they'll say, if I as a father burn my son with cigarettes, that's everybody would agree that's abusive. That's what you guys think is abusive. You don't feed your child, you neglect them, you abuse them, sexually abuse them, physically abuse them. But they will treat me, if I don't call my son a daughter, they will treat me worse than if I burned him with cigarettes. So now they're going to piggyback on existing laws to say, well, we have to protect this child. We can't tell the parents. Because if we tell the parents, this child's going to go home and get it beat even worse. And so that's how the school counselors are training, training them to keep secrets from you. So I'm going to say one last thing, and then we can move on, and then we'll talk about tools at the end. The greatest emotional blackmail on all of you parents, besides they're going to kill themselves, that's we've talked about that today, is they point a finger at your face and they've convinced you that parenting is about being inclusive. Wow. But everybody in here has children. When you brought your children home, especially that first baby, how many people did you let hold your child?
Nobody.
Nobody. Maybe your mother, maybe your aunt, maybe a sister. That's it. When they start crawling, this baby, even in his own home or her own home, is excluded from 90% of his own house when they start crawling around. And then when they get older, you obviously going to isolate them from content, you're going to curate their friends, and on and on and on. Good parenting has always been about exclusion, not inclusion. So don't let these people convince you that you have to be inclusive. Why? Literally nothing about parenting is inclusive. Good parenting is always about being exclusion. So embrace exclusion and reject inclusion, reject their cult language. And that's how you can beat these school counselors and teach your children the same.
Erin, I'm going to throw it to you. I saw from Erin's body language, she has dealt with this head on, and I think it is time. I think we would love to hear your story. I've heard it. It's incredibly powerful, but exemplifies some of what Alvin was talking about. So we'd love that kind of in the trenches view, which really has informed all of your activism and the amazing things that you're doing now.
Thank you for that. And before I get started too, I want to reiterate that the attorneys that are working in this space, they're doing it without making any type of profit. They're doing it all pro bono. And so anyone who has any loose change should really be supporting these lawyers because we need more of them. And they can't take on more cases if they're not funded, especially those who are bold enough to go into the family law spaces, which is fraught. And they're hard to win, CPS cases. They're very difficult, especially in my state. So I appreciate Vernadette stepping into my state because we've been abandoned in California pretty much. But I want to just briefly talk about my story because I'm a good little liberal, and I read the New York Times, and I didn't listen to CNN, so I do at least have that. But my daughter's school started to call her by a male name and use male pronouns, and I knew that because it was COVID, and she was right down the hall from me. And when I called the school, a school that she had never stepped foot in, it was freshman year of high school. They've never met her. They never met me. When I called the school and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" Not knowing, again, that I was walking into fire. How dare you call my daughter by a different name, use different pronouns? I laid into that. And they said, well, we need to be a safe space. That word, safe, I hate that word. I never use that word anymore because it is rendered meaningless. Being the lawyer, I said, please define safe for me. How is she safe with the name and pronoun that you have chosen for a stranger when she's right down the hall from me? Explain it to me. Silence. Does that mean that I'm unsafe because I call her her female name and use female pronouns for her? Silence. A few days later, the doorbell rang. Child Protective Services were standing there. The school had called because apparently I was unsafe. Luckily, I'm a lawyer, and I don't know honestly, I don't know what I said because I was deer in the headlights. But they didn't come back. But the police came the next day. So I got a double check-in, and this is in 2020. So when Vernadette talks about the weaponization of CPS, that's been actually going on for a long time. Yeah. The first case in California was in 2016. Again, they pick on immigrants or people with not a lot of knowledge or means, and they took away a 16-year-old daughter from a loving mother, and then they transitioned her without the mom's okay or approval. The court okayed the testosterone in this young girl. Because once a child is taken, so this is the cabal, you have to understand the A to B to C here. They take the child, put the child in CPS, child goes to foster care. Foster care, once the child's in foster care, in almost every state, the child then gets to dictate their own medical treatments.
Yeah.
So the child then gets to decide whether to poison themselves. And these kids online talk about it. Like, run away, you can go into foster care, accuse your parents of abuse, you can get into foster care, and then you can get the testosterone that you want.
Yeah.
And so they do this. You know, I've seen it. And then when these children are taken into CPS, I'm sorry, I'm a Debbie Downer today. I promise I'll end with something positive. But these kids then go into residential facilities, and now laws all over the country, mostly came from my state, thank you very much. Thank you, Gavin Newsom. We started it. We're building these residential facilities for these stolen children, because that's what they are. They're stolen. They're called unicorn homes, where these kids are then with affirming adults, and we're talking pink, blue hair, you know the person, who are running these homes, getting $14,000 a month per child, and transing them along the way. And so there's money to be made everywhere. It's not just big pharma. It's not that just the clinics. It's all these nonprofits making money off of children's misery. And I also, too, I know we're talking a lot about children, but I want you to remember from the parent perspective, it doesn't stop at 18. All the horrible things and the lack of scientific evidence for those under the age of 18 doesn't magically disappear when the child turns 18.
Right.
And nothing. Talk to a parent with a trans-identified child who's 17 and ask that parent what they're afraid of, and they'll tell you time. They don't want the days to go forward, because on that 18th birthday, that child now is free to do whatever they want. Yeah. So I want to leave you with that. And one last thing, too, that a lot of people don't know is these kids don't just come by the trans identity at school. It's very helpful when those schools are pushing it. Social media, but pornography is a massive entry point for these kids. And if they don't start with the pornography, they certainly get there. Once my daughter put on her social media, female to male, FTM, calling card to every pedophile, they sent her so much pornography. Animated pornography with bestiality, incest, cartoons. So I couldn't even block it. So porn is a huge, huge factor, especially with the boys, too. They get caught into the sissy porn. But we kind of have to remember that this is bigger than the schools. This is massive. That's why everybody watching, you can't be an advocate, donate. Everyone can donate. Find your place and donate.
Echo that. Erin, what you ended with, just with this kind of online threat, is something, Natalya, that you have talked about in some of your resources and with your organization. I wonder if you would comment on that. And then this larger issue of agency, which I think Erin demonstrated in taking her daughter out of this, but that I think a lot of parents need to really understand that they have the agency to influence their child, especially when it comes to these issues of gender.
And certainly the issue of agency came up during COVID, like who had agency over our children. And, just recently I was speaking to somebody about their 8-year-old, and she had just come from a pediatrician's appointment. And we started talking about the COVID shots and masking. And she said, oh, yeah, my daughter just got, her COVID shot. And I said, which one? And she goes, I don't know, whichever one the pediatrician told me to get. Like, I trust my doctor. And I think that's kind of a perfect cautionary tale. Like, we've abandoned agency. We have trusted the experts, which did so well during COVID when they shut down the schools and lied to us and told us that our kids were not safe in schools. There's that word, safety. They weren't safe. They told teachers they weren't safe in schools, but actually schools were the safest place to be without any special mitigations, because we saw that because the Scandinavian countries had reopened schools, some within a few weeks. Denmark reopened it within 8 weeks, and the Prime Minister apologized to families. But in your state, it was closed for 2-3 years.
There's still some schools that require the COVID shot.
Right. And the schools were closed, and Gavin Newsom sent his kids to private school and ate at the French Laundry. But kids were not safe. So I think that the thing that we try to remind parents of is that, you don't need to slash and burn. I was just listening to somebody speak about this. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, I think, has emerged as probably the best voice to me on all of these issues. And she said, I don't believe in, throwing out the baby with the bathwater. We don't need to destroy these institutions. We do need to reform them. And during these last few years, we certainly have had this surge of parents like Tiffany, like Shannon, like everyone here come out and assert their voices. And doctors like Eitan Haim, who blew the whistle and asserted his voice and took the risks that man has taken. Jay Bhattacharya, who I've been fortunate to become friends with and walk around the Stanford campus on, where he'd spent his entire undergraduate years and has taught for many years, and there would be signs all over the campus with his picture, basically saying that he was an enemy of the people. So I think parents need to remember that the experts failed us, that we are the experts.
Not bad.
So before we move into audience questions, I want to make sure we leave some time for that. I know several of you up here have really great resources that parents can use, and we shouldn't just think of this as parents. People who may not be parents or currently, or older parents, neighbors, friends, like everybody has a role to play in this. So I wanted to do kind of a lightning round, just so that we can maybe each take a minute or two to talk about the resources that your organizations offer, so that people really can get in that roll up the sleeves mode. If you're not already, from today's incredible speakers. Alvin, why don't we start with you? Actually, Vernadette, let's start with you. And Alvin, you can take it home.
Lightning round. Okay. Oh, gosh. All right. So what parents can do with regards to school districts and what parents can do with regards to Child Protective Services. Real quickly, I'm going to give you some pointers, because either you're a parent or a grandparent, or someone who is walking through this. Number one, parents need to resolve our identity crisis so that our children resolve their identity crisis. We have got to stop being our child's best friend. We need to take back parental authority. Yeah. And when we're talking with school districts or with Child Protective Services, we need to walk in with parental authority as our mantle and communicate to them, by the way, this is our family's value system, and this is what we expect from the school. I would put it in writing. We have a parental notification letter that you can get on our website, where we've got to go on the offense in all of this, where you put it in writing to the school district. Here are our family's values. They are research, they're evidence-based, and they may be faith-based, and literally lay it out with regard to any sort of gender identification. And if my child ever expresses confusion with their sex, or expresses or asked to be treated as something other than their sex, I demand to be notified immediately within 24 hours. Okay. Failure to do so, I would consider to be a violation of our fundamental rights, as well as a violation of our child's rights and well-being. CC your attorney if necessary. At minimum, make sure it goes in writing to the head of your school, and you get an acknowledgement that they've received it. You want one of two things to happen. Either they go on to the next victim, they leave you alone because they realize you're too much trouble. Yeah. Or, and schools they're conflict averse. So they don't want to mess with you. You don't want them to mess with, who is the mother, father with, yes, you want to be that mom. Or you want to lay the foundation for a lawsuit for all the defenses I talked about that you'd be able to undercut them. With Child Protective Services, with the lightning round, all I have time is this. The Fourth Amendment is your friend. Just because CPS shows up at your door, and even with a police officer, does not mean they have the right to invade your home. They do not. They have to have a warrant, or a court order, or they have to have legitimate reasons that there is an imminent threat. I'm talking like there's a fire. Without those exceptions, they're not allowed in your home. So don't let them into your home. Do not let them talk to your child without you or your attorney present. And there's too much to say to have the time. So instead of me sharing with you those things, I'll share with you resources where we have documented these things.
Right.
We've created what parents need to know in dealing with school officials, pamphlet. What parents need to know to deal with Child Protective Services. Honestly, this one is especially because you're going to want to have this in place and know what to do even before you get the knock on the door. On your tables there is a card. No, I lost it. Here we go. With a QR code, so you can get these on our website. For those of you in the faith community, we've created a church transgender response guide. This is teaching largely churches how to understand this phenomenon, how to stand with their parents, to be able to protect their children in their midst, and how to speak directly to the young people themselves, because that's the last thing is we have to inoculate them with the ability to guard their own hearts.
We're going to go. Oh, okay.
All right, Natalya. I love the inoculation as an analogy or a metaphor. I never remember, but I think there are many factors that we've learned that inoculate children. Parents, grandparents. I think there's a real absence of grandparents and intergenerational knowledge where kids just don't have context. They think that, they have this problem and they're the first ones ever. And the person who's telling them what to do is somebody they met on the internet. Team sports. I think, crowd out their time. I think that's really it. Like, it's not about what you can't do. It's about what you're doing, right? Team sports. That's something we learned during the COVID pandemic. These kids who missed team sports, missed their coaches who were like their North Stars. Like, they're just a second parent. They're so important to them. But in terms of resources, we created a toolkit at Restore Childhood called An Urgent Conversation. And it's meant to inspire conversation. It was developed from center-left journalists and doctors who really want to embrace gender nonconformity and empower parents with the language and the resources to start talking to people. So it's at gendertoolkit.com, and we have cards, and they also have a QR code. So feel free to use it, share it. Also share it with pediatricians, because pediatricians are not experts in this field. And it is our job to educate them, because if we don't, the pharmaceutical companies will. Yeah. So.
All right. And Alvin.
All right, so over at the table right there, we have some flyers. That's the K through 12 brainwashing method. It breaks down exactly how the public education and even some private schools, how it's structured and how the brainwashing, how it breaks down. But as far as the tools, you can go to courageisahabit.org, or you can hit it, the QR code from the flyer. And I want everyone to click on, when they get to courageisahabit.org, school counselors. Okay, there's a button that says school counselors. And in there, you're going to see several things. And it's a campaign we call Behind Closed Doors. My organization, we started a couple years ago. We infiltrated ASCA. We went to their conferences, their webinars. As much as I hated it, we had to pay for some of it. But we really got a great, we got all the examples from their PowerPoints and from their trainings and from their certification programs. And we showed you exactly how they're training the counselors. But here's the important thing. When you go to school, when you hit school counselors on any of those tools, at the end, there's an opt-out form. The one that Vernadette says is just fine, but turn one in. This is your notice to say, hey, you are not to meet with my child without my consent, without my presence. Remember, as a parent, when you send them to when you pick a dentist or a violin teacher or a swim teacher, you vet that organization and that person. You get referrals and such. These school counselors, you've never vetted them. You've never read reviews. These are lunatics that are missionaries, and their mission are your children. So there's zero reason why any government official should be meeting with your child talking about things that have no business talking about. Okay, so that's the first one. Every parent, fill out a opt-out form, whether it's ours, whether it's Vernadette's. Fill one out, one per child, and you got to do it every year. The second tool I want everyone to grab from the school counselors is called stranger danger. Okay, when our kids were little, even though we know this is like a 0.001% chance, we tell them when you're in a department store or a mall and someone grabs you, what do you do?
Scream.
Scream. Not my mom, not my dad. You scream and you kick. Why? You know that's not going to happen. That's such a small percentage. But you do it anyway. You do it anyway because you want to teach them, because at that moment, if they don't know that, it's too late. But as they got older, we forgot to teach them about stranger danger. We dropped them off in a building that says school. And all of a sudden, we forgot that there's still stranger danger, but it's disguised differently. So we created a tool called Stranger Danger. It's been used in 4 different countries. And it has 4 strategies. It's not comprehensive by any stretch, but these 4 strategies, every single parent can implement that in their families immediately. And it can be modified based on the age of the child. It can be modified based on your family values. I won't go through all 4, but if you download it, anybody can use it, and hopefully it inspires you to be able to come up with more. But these 4 strategies teaches you to teach your children to protect themselves when they're away from you. Because we talk a lot today about how we can fight, but we don't teach our kids how to fight.
Absolutely.
And so remember, just because they're not getting grabbed at the mall, which is a tiny percentage that'll never happen, there's a much higher percentage that a school counselor or a teacher is going to trans your child. Mm-hmm. And we forgot that there's such a thing as stranger danger. So hopefully that tool will bring that back. And thank you.
Okay, we do have some time for audience questions. Oh, all right. All right, let's start here. And this might stretch, or if you don't mind shouting, I can repeat it.
Oh. And yeah. Oh, one question is for Daniel, and that's, do you have any idea how many cases you've rejected because of the statute of limitations?
At least 2 dozen.
I have 2 questions.
We're not keeping I don't think got a running tally that we're keeping, but it's at least 2 dozen so far.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. And then the other is for anybody. I recall at our church, if we want to volunteer with kids, you have to do a training about teaching you about
Child sex abuse.
Child sex abuse, yes. And one of the things you learn is no adult should ever ask a kid to keep secrets. And do we not teach that to kids in school anymore? Because this is a direct violation of that principle. No. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The kids are encouraged to keep secrets from the parents.
Yeah, they're caught too.
The children, like my daughter, was told that I would abuse her if I didn't affirm her trans identity. And so they believe it because the second most important person in a child's life is the teacher. And most students love their teacher. And so if the teacher says, well, your parent, just like in your case, your parent may abuse you. And so we're going to keep it secret. And the child readily agrees to that. And that has been ubiquitous with these kids. You know, I know in all of your cases, Vernadette, the child was encouraged to keep it a secret. Everybody knows but mom and dad.
So one of the things we encourage people when we do trainings to teach children, because you're right, we have to empower them at the end of the day, to teach them, we teach them 2 things. If anyone ever begins to talk about, were you possibly born in the wrong body, or any question like that, we teach them, put out their fat little hand and say, stop, I don't feel safe with this conversation, I want to call my mom. I want to call my dad. The second thing we teach them is that if any adult ever asks you to keep a secret or talks to me about keeping a secret from my parents, the first thing you do is call me.
I want to.
Bring the straight attracting does absolutely
Start.
The other, if I can just piggyback, also saying that to the social worker, what you are doing is causing me great anxiety because the schools take anxiety usually very seriously. So it was another idea. Question there. All right, we'll go there. Do you mind coming up? That way we can hear you.
Okay. What I do want to say is what I tell people about my daughter, because it's been like 8 years or 9, long time, is I say my daughter was moving away from her parents like you're supposed to do in high school. And it's the high school teachers that did start to capture her. So she was doing what she was supposed to do at that age. Okay, I have 2 things. First, if you're a parent here and you haven't talked to parents of ROGD kids, you need to. I run the one for the Chicago area. We actually help out in Iowa. We have people down in Springfield. It's easy to find. Parents of ROGD kids, fill out their form. I have an alias, Monique, so you'll talk to my alias with that. But it's a way to not feel alone. We connect people. We have monthly Zooms. My friend here sends out emails with articles regularly. So make sure you do that. Okay. The question I have for the lawyers is, we have a couple of these cases. So I've heard horrible stories, a whole bunch of them. The worst stories are the parents going through a divorce. And Cook County, it just drives me crazy. This one gentleman is in 100,000. We have people who are in just a lot of money. So it was suggested to talk to Administer Justice. Have you heard of that? Administerjustice.org. It's a very nice little thing, and the lawyers will talk to you for $30 or something. You go to seminars to learn how to work it. But somebody needs to put out a pamphlet, or anybody who's a lawyer or knows lawyers in the Chicago, Cook County area, contact me, contact Jeanette. We need lawyers. The guardians are woke, and they're taking over the kids, and they're charging for it. It's horrible. So we need a pamphlet on that, on how to talk to these people, how to tell the parents their rights. Anybody want to speak to that?
I do. I think we go to 5, right? That was what the thing said.
Yeah, we have about 10 minutes.
Okay, good. All right. So I was a family law practitioner for 12 years and a guardian ad litem appointed to represent children for 11 years. I have tried one of these cases. They're horrible. But there's something that we can do. And yes, and when I don't want to sleep, I'll put together a pamphlet. But there is something that we can do. What we discovered is that there is something called judicial training that is happening with juvenile court judges and family court judges. Our client, Jamie Reed, back when she was on the dark side, would do these trainings. But we discovered it in our CPS case in Arizona, where the judge slipped and she started fighting with me about the Sweden suicide case. And I'm like, Judge, that case is not in evidence. She's like, well, Miss Broyles, I'm not ignorant. And light bulbs start going off. So what activists can do, some of you, mama bears, we've been thinking about open records requests to judges, to juvenile courts, to request, and that any citizen can do these. And wow, that might be a great project for us to work on. To get all of that. And once we got our hands on it, it was pure propaganda. And to begin, if we can get this in some states and get this on the news and out this, I think that'd be huge.
There is a very prolific attorney. His name is Asaf Orr. Hello, Asaf.
Asaf Orr, yeah.
Yes. He hails from, I think, New Jersey and now lives in California. And he teaches the family court judges. And he's been doing this for a very long time before we were all awakened to this. He also teaches minors counsels. Those are the attorneys who represent the children. Right. And so the family courts have been tainted. And the bar, sorry, I know you need your sleep. But we need to be counteracting that and teaching continuing education courses. I know you've done it in medicine, but where we are now counteracting and teaching family court judges what the real science is, because I sat through one of those classes. I took a minors counsel's class, and not only did the judge sit through it with Asif, or the really horrible person, but she was the judge in one of my friend's cases, and they used that case as the example. He lost custody of his child, of course, but you can see how they were tied together. And yeah, we've got a lot of work to do.
I do want to give some good news about Asif Orr. He is in deep trouble in the state of Alabama, where he engaged in very obvious judge shopping and forum shopping, which is against the code of ethics in Alabama federal court. And he and 10 other of the plaintiff's attorneys are now having to face the judge there for sanctions, which can include being, taken off this. I'm not even sure disbarment, but yeah, I wouldn't want to be him right now.
All right. And on a happy note, we don't have more time for questions. I did want to just mention one thing that we had discussed a little bit with each other, is that even if you don't have what makes a good lawsuit, there is a role for you as a parent, the person who would like to bring the lawsuit. So contact really anybody that you've heard today, because that is absolutely a person. Corey's a great example with the activism in Indiana, just to bring sunlight to this issue. So a hand for our panel, please. Thank you all. Okay, and just another heartfelt thank you, and just to the amazing Carrie Mendoza, who honestly knows how to put on a pretty good conference here in Glencoe. So now we'll turn it to the close. Are we jumping right in?
What was that?
Oh, well.
Well, I just want to say, thank you to Stella O'Malley, who's over in Ireland, Jen Specht, and all the wonderful organizations and all the wonderful people, and especially our Midwesterners. We had a great opportunity to bring together, people from Wisconsin, Minnesota, Indiana, western suburbs of Illinois, to come to the North Shore here in our hood, and of course our Californians, everyone. So thank you so much, and we will see you soon.